Hello, I'm Jeff Paur, senior writer for RealTime Fantasy Sports. Welcome to the RealTime Fantasy Sports Show. On today's show, we're going to do a championship recap. We're going to go over the fantasy championship, the best ball championship, and also the RealTime Fantasy Sports Invitational Championship that we did, inviting the top players on our site. And I'm going to be joined today by Vice President of RealTime Fantasy Sports, everybody's favorite moderator, keeper of the peace as well, Chris Thompson. Chris, thanks so much for joining me. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Jeff. Great to be on. Glad to get out of the dungeon for a little bit. Good to be here.
Yeah. So let's get into these championships. A lot of, great stuff going on in all these contests. We're going to look at the fantasy championship first. I'm going to pull that up. You can see the leaderboard here. And we are going to interview the leader of it just a little later in the show, Fozzie Dog, everybody's favorite Fozzie Dog, Jeremy Brock. So he is winning the championship right now. He currently has about a 50-point lead over the second place owner, Malin. So any thoughts on this leaderboard as you look at it right now, Chris?
Certainly Fozzie Dog has 4 teams in the top 12. That's amazing at this point. He should be very proud of that. But there's, like you mentioned, some previous champions that are, very close behind him. Malin's in second. I think Elliott and Nunn 999. The teams in sixth and eighth are also previous champions. And as we know in this particular format, once you get through the regular season and into the championship round, you don't totally reset, but it's pretty much a sprint those last 3-4 weeks, and it's crucial what happens those weeks. Anybody can win really once they get into the playoffs. So these teams look great. Hopefully they can stick up there all the way through the end.
Yeah, let's look at some of these teams now. I totally agree with your thoughts. So you just got to get in at this point and hope you hit big. But still, it's good to be on top at this point of the season because it's showing that your team's pretty strong. So let's look at some of these top teams. This is Fozzie Dog's, his 3 teams that are in the top 10. Again, we're going to talk to him a little later, but he definitely has a Miami theme to a lot of them. Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle on a lot of these rosters, and he definitely went receiver heavy as well early in his draft. It looks like Nick Chubb's really the only running back that it seems he used high draft capital on. He has Kenneth Walker as well on a lot of these teams, and a mix at running back at quarterback too with Tua, Geno Smith, and Patrick Mahomes. Always interesting to see how that plays out. What do you think about these 3 teams, Chris?
Yeah, like you said, I see a lot of Miami stacks going there. A little bit of a Kansas City stack with the Mahomes quarterback. And he's definitely picked up, Kenneth Walker has picked up his teams quite a bit. That was a good pickup for him. I'm sure he didn't spend too much draft capital on that, and he's coming through huge. But he's also got some just stacked wide receiver rooms. He's got Kupp and Hill and Waddle and Jefferson show up on all these teams. So I think he's got a good diversity going across all these teams, which is, I know he plays quite a few teams, but that's tough to do to get that mixture in all these teams that are so close to the top.
Yeah, definitely. Let's look at the next team then in the standings. It's a Malin's team. He has Josh Allen, Travis Etienne, Josh Jacobs, Alvin Kamara, Chris Godwin, Cooper Kupp. So again, 2 really good receivers in Godwin and Kupp, but not quite the elite options as Fozzie Dog's teams at the receiver spot. But still, he has a good mix of talent here. Josh Jacobs obviously was a really good pick for him because he went a lot later than a lot of these elite running backs. He's played really well this year. And then Josh Allen, too. That's got to be the big concern for him at this point as I look at this roster because his backups, Russell Wilson, we all know hasn't been very good this year. So he's going to need a healthy Josh Allen, I think, going forward if he hopes to keep staying at the top of the leaderboard.
Yep, I totally agree with that. This team could hit. You never know. But, yeah, there's some questions.
I do like his running back. So he has some great options on his bench. Dante Foreman, Antonio Gibson, then Kyron Williams. You don't know what's going to happen with him. I mean, I don't like that offensive line in Los Angeles. So that's a concern. But still, he could end up being a guy that starts for them down the stretch. So he's really stacked at that running back spot. Kind of unfortunate he can't trade any of these running backs to, maybe upgrade a receiver or get a stopgap at quarterback. But like you said, really strong team. Obviously doing really well to start the year, and I think a lot of it will depend on the health of Josh Allen. Let's move on to the next team in the standings. This is the team. Is it Jaffe?
Team Jaffe.
Yeah, Jaffe. He has Jalen Hurts, Austin Eckler. It's the first Austin Eckler sighting we've seen in the TFC. I thought maybe there'd be more since he is having such a huge year. But Tyreek Hill, another common theme, and then DeAndre Hopkins. So it's a guy that he probably got later in the draft, wide receiver number 1 at this point, but was without him the first 6 weeks of the season. But feeling pretty good about him right now. Any thoughts on this team, Chris?
Yeah, like you said, Hopkins jumps out at me a little bit. He's obviously way up in the standings already, and Hopkins has barely helped him at this point, so that could help out down the road. Hawkinson had a big week last week, his first week with the Vikings, so that might be another thing that vaults him up even higher. He's got kind of an interesting bench as well. Some of the guys, Michael Carter, Jeff Wilson, those guys might be on the upswing with things changing and, changing teams, Brees Hall out, that kind of thing. So that one's got some interesting upside on it.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, let's move on to the next championship. This is the Best Ball Championship. Very popular, sold out. We love this contest here at RealTime Fantasy Sports, and it's very popular, and a lot of owners obviously like it too. And we have one owner actually at the top with 2 teams, Jay Halata. So he has 2 teams at the top of the standings. Pretty amazing to me. He's got, it's, 17, about a 30-point lead over himself. And then the DCC team after that, Bone East 1999, he's up there in the standings too. Then Malins, another team, Fozzie Dog. He has a team in the top 10. So any thoughts on these standings as you look at them, Chris?
Yeah, like you said, it's amazing somebody could be in first and second in this contest. 10,000 teams and somehow bubble 2 of them up to the top. That's pretty impressive. And it's not like these are identical teams either. There's a lot of different players he's got across them. So he's really hit, a couple different ways. He's got the common theme. The Miami stack is going on one of them, and another one he's got some other top guys like Eckler and Chubb and various other components that just sprinkled throughout his roster of Fields and things like that. So just amazing accomplishment to be where he's at. And this contest is a little different than the fantasy championship because there's not a reset for playoffs. So, if you're in the lead as you're getting into those last 2 or 3 weeks, you got a pretty big advantage, and he could carry it all the way through. Not as much of a crapshoot like some of the others that reset it for the last playoff weeks.
Yeah, definitely. I just pulled up his roster of his first place team. I really like it. Mahomes, Tua, then he has Saquon Barkley. First time we've mentioned him, but he's having a huge year. I love his running backs with Dameon Pierce he has as well. And Kenneth Walker, Josh Jacobs. So 4 really good running backs, and then 2 great quarterbacks. His receivers are good as well. So it's a pretty good, really pretty good looking team.
Yeah, sometimes you look at that and wonder how he drafted all that. He's got Tyreek Hill, Justin Jefferson, Jalen Waddle all in there too. So, yeah, amazing.
Yeah, let's look at his other team as well that's doing well. He has Fields and Herbert here, Nick Chubb, Austin Eckler, so another Eckler sighting, and Brees Hall, unfortunately, is hurt for him, so could be even better if he was still healthy, but a good receiver core as well. And really deep at running back. Once again, Ramondre Stevenson also on his team. So this is another good-looking team.
Yep, definitely.
All right, let's move on to the third place team. This is Ryan Moore. So we'll quickly go through his roster. He's doing really well. Want to give him his due. Derek Carr, Justin Fields, Jared Goff. So 3 quarterbacks here. He went with Austin Eckler, Josh Jacobs, another Eckler sighting, Tyreek Hill, DK Metcalf. Michael Pittman's been really disappointing, but Juju Smith-Schuster really good. Amon-Ra St. Brown. This guy's receivers core is really good. That stands out to me. I mean, he's got some stacked options there. Yep. And then tight end Gesicki, Hawkinson, and Njoku.
Definitely. One of the things I always think is interesting is how how teams are built in these best ball leagues. This guy in third place went with the 3 quarterbacks, 3 tight ends, and then everything else: running back, wide receiver. The guy in first and second had two quarterbacks, 3 tight ends on both of his teams. Now his quarterbacks, have done great. Fields, Herbert, Tua, Mahomes, but always interesting to see how that works. And if you can get by with 2 quarterbacks, that gives you one more spot to take a flyer on a running back, wide receiver. That who knows, that might be the difference. So always interesting to see how that
Yeah,
plays out at the end of
I
the year.
totally agree, Chris. It's always interesting to see that. And one thing I've noticed is we haven't seen Travis Kelce on any of these teams, or Mark Andrews. I mean, these are the 2 top
Yeah,
tight ends, and I thought maybe they might be on more of these rosters, but a lot of these guys went with the waited on that position and went with the 3 option and hoping one hits each week. So kind of interesting to see that. So
yeah,
one
that
more
is.
team, yeah, one more team I wanted to mention. This is another one, Mallon's team. I think he was in 4th place here, if I'm not mistaken. So he is
Yep.
another team in the top 10 here in the best ball championship. So kudos to him for this team here to do. He's doing really well here. He went with 3 QBs, 3 really good ones, 2 really elite ones, and then Kirk Cousins, who's not too shabby as well. But Jalen Hurts and Tua, and then Saquon, Donta Foreman. So he took Foreman, which is this not a pickup but a draft pick. So good work there getting him, seeing the foresight that he might turn into something this year, even though he wasn't drafted very high in a lot of leagues. Dameon Pierce, Miles Sanders, Kenneth Walker. Kenneth Walker's been on a lot of these teams, Chris, today here, but it's another really good roster that could make a run here.
Yeah, definitely. Receivers are great as well. Yeah, this one's another one. He picked up some guys late that are really hitting for him.
Yeah, good work there to Mallon. So he's in the top 10 in 2 championships. Let's look at the last one now, the RTFFC Invitational. This one was really a lot of fun to do this year. First year we've done this. So maybe briefly talk about what this is, Chris, and
Yeah,
in case anyone's unaware.
This one, a few of our customers have talked about us doing this for a few years, and we finally pulled it off this year. It's basically, we invited the top 500 ranked players from our site, and we rank players based on how many leagues they win and how many leagues they're in and that kind of thing. So we invited the top 500, and we got 72 of first 72 that signed up are in this RTFFC Invitational, and it's I believe it's 6 different RTFFC leagues, and they each kind of bubble up. The winners of those leagues will then go on to the championship. But it's really a little different because each owner can only have one team in this league, so you can't have more than one. So everybody gets one shot. Again, we'll see Fozzie Dog here in at the 3rd spot. So you'll see some common guys that you see in some of these other ones, but it's a little tougher than the others where you can't buy 100 entries into it. You just get one.
Yeah, it definitely kind of shown who the best of the best is with this contest. And the leading team is Bleeding Green. Then we have Donkey Punch, Fozzie Dog, Tommy Gunn. He's a really good owner as well. I'm familiar with him. So a lot of good teams in this contest. Let's look at the top one, though, the Bleeding Green team. Not really familiar with him, but obviously good owner, and he's got a good team here. Tua, Austin Eckler, Josh Jacobs, Cordell Patterson, Devontae Adams, Alan Lazard, Jalen Waddle. So pretty good core to his team. Tua is kind of a common theme I'm noticing. Lamar Jackson, too, on this team as well, though. So 2
Right.
really good QBs, but Tua's kind of been a common theme here, and this is a good-looking team, though.
Yeah, I like this team. This is good. He's also got Deion Jackson might have filled in one week for him and hit. Brandon Cooks was big for a little bit. So he's got some other players on the bench that can kind of fill in. Keenan Allen hasn't been real good for him, but maybe he'll come back and take a spot. So yeah, he's got a really good team.
Yep. Let's look at the second place team: Jalen Hurts, Tyler Algier, Jonathan Taylor. Disappointing Jonathan Taylor, but he had Kenneth Walker to help make up for that. Tyreek Hill, Michael Pittman's been disappointing too. George Kittle, probably the highest tight end we've talked about to date on one of these teams. Ramondre Stevenson is on the bench because he's on a bye. So there's some pretty good depth at running back, kind of making up for that Jonathan Taylor pick that's not worked out so well for him. But Jalen Hurts has been really good too. So this is another solid team that could make a run, most definitely. Anything stand out to you at all with this one, Rick, Chris?
Yeah, just a lot of things you said. Ramondre has been a good surprise for him, as well as Walker. That like you said, this is probably the first team we've seen with Jonathan Taylor on it. So the first guy that overcame that, that first draft pick curse. But yeah, another tough team to beat here.
Yep. All right, let's look at one more. This is Fozzie Dog's other team. So he's top 10 in 3 of them. That's really impressive. But he has Marcus Mariota as his QB this week because Joe Burrow's on a bye. So no Tua for him in this one. But Kenneth Walker, once again, Nick Chubb seems to be a guy that's been on a lot of his rosters too. Juju, Taysom Hill, like you said, he took a lot of him. He took a lot of stock in him late in drafts. Jamar Chase is hurt on his bench. So that obviously really hurts him. But still, good team for Fozzie once again. Done well with this roster. Has some injuries to overcome here, but still, he could make a run with this one.
Definitely, yeah. The first Travis Kelce sighting. Yeah, another interesting thing is this team's actually in the same RTFFC league as the team in first place. So first and third place teams drafted out of the same league. That's kind of tough to do too. But so Fozzie's in second place in his own league and third overall in the whole championship. So
that is crazy. I didn't see that one. Good eyes on that one, Chris. All right, speaking of Fozzie, we had the chance to talk to him, Chris, and so we're going to do that interview right now. We're going to put it in here. Always a lot of fun to talking to. It's Jeremy Brock. Everybody knows him as Fozzie Dog here at RealTime Fantasy Sports. So here's our interview with Jeremy Brock, aka Fozzie Dog, who is in first place overall of the Fantasy Championship and top 10 in all 3 of the contests we just talked about. And we're joined now by Jeremy Brock. Everybody knows him as Fozzie Dog, though. Jeremy, Fozzie, how are you doing?
Good. How are you guys doing? Hi, Jeff. Hey, Chris.
Good to see you, Jeremy.
Good to see you, too. You have to be really excited. I mean, you are on a roll right now in the TFC. You have a team in 1st, 4th, 7th, and 12th overall. So you got to be feeling pretty good about that start.
Yeah, that's quite the start, I'd say. I didn't expect quite that at the beginning of the year, to be honest, but here we are now. We just got to keep hammering at it, I think.
Looking at the season right now, what do you think has worked for you, and why do you think you've been so successful to date?
I took a lot of approaches this year, try to learn from past mistakes of the last years. Definitely having some Tua stacks that my Miami Dolphins stacks this year have really paid off for the people who have them. I happen to have a lot of them, but I've got to mix in with a lot of different players, whether it was receiver heavy, running back heavy. This year, it seems to be so far that the Cooper Kupp, Matthew Stafford combo is Tua and Tyreek Hill or something, though, if you ask me. Let's see what the rest of the season plays out to be, but so far, those are some hot teams.
So I'm going to pull up your roster. So this is the your first, 4th, and 7th place teams in the TFC. So we can look at them here. Like you said, you have Tua on a lot of them. Tyreek Hill's on all 3 of them. You have really good receivers. You have Jalen Waddle too. So you went Hill and Waddle on some of these teams, and you have Tua and Kenneth Walker's a common theme as well. So was he a target of yours before the draft?
Well, I started out and I had my share of Rashad Penny, but there wasn't a Rashad Penny that I didn't have that I didn't try to put a Kenneth Walker on at the same time. And I didn't think Rashad Penny would make it through the season, so I wanted all the Kenneth Walker shares I could get this year. And he's proved out to be one of the top backs to have. A lot of the rookie backs this year have been very well, opposed to previous years where only one is nice. There's been a few nice ones. Damian Pierce and other ones that have been working out well for people. But Kenneth Walker is definitely somebody that I loaded up on everywhere this year.
So Jeremy, last year, you didn't do quite as well last year, and you definitely took a ton of rookies last year.
Yep.
And I know you did a lot of that this year as well. We talked a little bit about Kenneth Walker just right there, but did you change your approach this year with maybe the wide receivers because they haven't quite hit as much this year? Or did you use a lot of the same approach and just some of those?
I did use a lot of the same approach. I fine-tuned it a little bit. I don't want to get into exactly what I was doing to change what I was doing, but I was definitely I was honed in on more players this year than the previous years that I thought were going to happen. I was just, I don't know. Some years you're on it, some years you're not. This year, the players that I was liking are definitely in the spots where they should be. So when it came to the trade deadlines, you're always wondering if somebody that you have a hot player of, if someone's going to put a running back on that team that takes a lot of value from what is going hot for you. I was able to make it to the trade deadline so far, and the bye weeks that have been leading up to here have been working out in my favor so far. So adding all those into it, last year I started off with the running backs of J.K. Dobbins and Jess Edwards. So before the season even started, most of my teams were already in trouble. And I got in foul trouble off the beginning. So this year I took a lot more different approach, and I was able to, well, not different approach, I want to say, but same approach, but just some fine changing, like I said. But I was able to avoid the injury bug so far, which has really made a difference, I think.
I'm always interested to see the QB situations and how people approach that. You kind of have a mix here. I mean, you have Tua, Geno Smith, and Patrick Mahomes as your starter here. So Mahomes, you obviously had to use high draft capital on, but the other guys you didn't. What's your approach normally? Do you like to, you have a lot of teams in these contests. Do you like to mix it up, or is there a certain approach you like to take?
I was mixing it up a lot this year, especially with some quarterbacks. I was either waiting or taking some early because I didn't want to get stuck with too many of the same players last year as I did. So I wanted to spread it out a little bit, get a little bit more differential going. When it came to the quarterbacks, I wanted a few teams with the top quarterbacks, and I wanted to take a challenge on some of the lower ones. And that just happened how you ran into Tua being able to come with the Dolphin stack. I was having to wait on that team, and Tua has been a lot better than I expected. But so is Geno Smith. I got Geno Smith on one of my teams here with Josh Allen, and Josh Allen is, as we all know, suffering from that elbow strain. And Geno hopefully will, if need be, carry me for the next week or so. So it just depends. Justin, there's a lot of different changing parts in the last few weeks. You can see still some players getting hot, some players that were running hot starting to run cold. Just sitting back and waiting, really.
Yeah, tight end too. That's another position that's always intriguing to me. It is so, kind of really top heavy with the elite guys being really good, and then it kind of, have a mismatch of all sorts of different types of players after that. And it looks like, again, these teams, you have Taysom Hill, Dawson Knox, Mike Gesicki. So that's not really a lot of high draft capital used on tight ends. Have you gotten away with it so far? Do you feel good about the tight end position going forward for you?
On a lot of my teams, I was able to get Njoku, and he was up until his ankle injury has been doing well. And some of the other teams, depending on these ones here, I have to relook at them here real quick. But like you said, they're not always the top tight ends here. I may have one of those in the top ones that have like a Mahomes and Kelsey on them. But no, that's a Mahomes and a Gesicki one right there. I got Taysom on a bunch of them too as a third tight end. You may have noticed. Mm-hmm. He hasn't exactly done what I thought he could possibly, his potential is, but he always runs into the chance that here anytime he could get shifted into that position this year. So I have not let him go much yet this year. But he also has been kind of wasting spots on the rosters a little bit. But I tell you what, Gesicki can have some big games if you don't want too many of the same players on the same team. But a lot of those mid-tier tight ends have pulled their weight this year so far.
Yeah, definitely. And as you know, when you get to the championship round, the playoffs, in this big contest, you need somebody to just go off, some players that just have huge games and carry you to a championship. So how do you feel as it gets closer? It's going to be here before we know it, a few weeks away. The championship's going to start. Do you feel like your players are set up for good runs in those big games coming up?
I really do. Guys like Nick Chubb or Kenneth Walker, Josh Jacobs should have a really strong week this week, I'm thinking. I'm looking at a team right here that has all three of Nick Chubb, Josh Jacobs, and Kenneth Walker on it with Tyreek Hill and Justin Jefferson. Patrick Mahomes is the quarterback, Buffalo's defense, that's going to be a pretty good team down the stretch, I would think, especially when it gets colder. They're going to lean on running backs a little bit more like they did. They have some good receivers with that time. But each one of those top teams are a little bit differently. Some are a little bit heavier with receivers. Some are a good mix. That got lucky on like Walker to mix with some of the other running backs. They're just doing pretty good, I'd say, and I like what they're doing. I think they do get a good chance down the stretch.
Definitely. And I mean, one common theme I see with all your teams, though, is your receiver rooms are just stacked for all these top teams. So that definitely looks like it's a strategy that you employed come draft day, and it really has paid off for you this year. Nick Chubb's probably the highest drafted running back you have on any of these teams, barring if someone else got hurt that I'm not seeing because I don't have your bench. But it looks like you really went not so much zero running back, but you targeted those receivers early in draft. Is that something you like to do a lot?
This year I did do a lot of I was taking the best value of what players were there as always. I don't always go by the standard pro that everybody else does on their sheet just because that's the next guy up. I don't just take him. I'll drop down a little bit and take the guy that I really want. But that gets me in trouble sometimes too. But I like to dictate what I want instead of just waiting and hoping that it comes to me in these drafts. So then when it comes to the end of the year, if I'm losing, at least I'm losing with the guys I wanted.
Yeah, definitely.
Instead of room for teams that didn't really want that player and it's still not doing good, at least it's the players I wanted.
So I'd be remiss not to mention that we're talking about all these championships on our site, and you are on the leaderboard in all of them. So the Best Ball Championship, you have a team in 7th place right now. How do you feel about that team? You're roughly 54 points out of first. Talk about that team a little bit.
That team has been in first place a lot of the year. I had a bye week where 2 of the quarterbacks were off and a couple of the main receivers because in that one, I'm trying to pull it up right here so I can remember everybody that's on it. There we go. The quarterbacks on that one are Stafford, which he hasn't been as great as I thought, but I've got him on there with Cooper Kupp and not Gabriel Davis, but Allen Robinson. But I also got Josh Allen teamed up with Stephon Diggs and Gabriel Davis. Then I have Tua on there with Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill. So I have 3 great sets of receivers with all their quarterbacks on that one.
Yeah, Kenneth Walker's on that team as well. Now you have a healthier Cordell Patterson for down the
Great to have him back. I'm going to tell you what, that team was doing all right, but I needed some running back power to come back in that one. And then Michael Carter happened to get a little bit stronger now that Breece Hall had his injury throughout the year. So a couple of those guys are now making that team a little bit stronger. And then Khalil Herbert has had his days where he's pumped that best ball team up himself in between the 2 times.
Then the RTFFC Invitational too. You have a good team in that one as well. You think you got a chance to pull off a victory there too?
I do. I've been bouncing back between first place on there a lot this year and stuff too. I think that one might have Jamar Chase on it, which is slowing it down just here briefly. But I've got a lot of firepower on that team too, so it should be able to wait until he gets back. It should be fine. And then we'll just have to wait, and see what happens.
Definitely. So last question before I let you go, Fozzie, again, appreciate you coming on, but just how do you prepare for the stretch run with you have a ton of teams you're looking at here that are all in contention. Best ball, you don't have to do anything, obviously, but your other ones, you have to, get that roster set. I know you don't want to give away any secrets, but how do you prepare for this stretch run? What are you looking to do?
Oh man, it's been well, since I'm doing so well in so many different contests this year, it's been a lot more strenuous because I'm making sure I don't want to miss something. I can tell you that much. So I'm fine combing through as much as I can and hope I don't miss something that would help any of the teams. But since a lot of them are doing so well, a lot of the players that are out there I just don't happen to need this year either in some of the places. But I can tell you I have put more kickers on this week than I had to at any time because Nick Folk's on bye week. Good gosh, I had so many kickers I had to do and defenses. It was driving me nuts this week, but it's they're all set. They're all done. We all love waivers. All the guys know that have many teams know the fun of that.
Definitely.
All right, Fozzie, I appreciate you joining us.
But I do got to say, even with the waivers, sorry to cut you right back off, with all the waivers, with all the power tools and the great tools that there are at RT Sports, it makes it a lot easier to have that many teams and to be able to play. I got to say that.
Yeah, definitely. It's a nice page to use and get everything in order for the week. I agree with that, especially for an owner like you with a lot of teams like you mentioned. Again, Fozzie, good luck to you in all these contests going forward. You're off to a great start. I hope you can keep it going. A lot of luck to you going forward. And thanks again for being just a great user of our site. We always appreciate talking to you and getting to know you a little better.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, Chris. I appreciate it.
Take care, Jeremy.
Big guys.
And that was our interview with Fozzie Dog, Jeremy Brock. Really appreciate him joining the show. Chris, it's always fun talking to Fozzie. He's a great guy, and he's in a ton of our contests, always very active on the site as well.
Definitely. I love talking to Fozzie Dog. He's the greatest.
And I appreciate talking to you today, Chris. A lot of fun talking to you about these contests. A lot of fun to get up to date on all these. We still have some time left, but stuff's starting to get figured out a little bit here with these standings, and as the playoffs get near as well. So it was a lot of fun to get caught up on these championships with you. Appreciate you joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
All right, this has been Jeff Paur, senior writer for RealTime Fantasy Sports. Hopefully you are doing well in all of your championships and all of your leagues, and I hope you have a lot of success the rest of the season. Have a great day, everyone.